I'm here in Adams Morgan, Washington, D.C. with Bill Thomas, owner of Jack Rose Dining Saloon and underground cocktail bar Dram and Grain. I'm Austa, and this is At the Table. How did you come up with the idea to open Jack Rose?
Really, what happened is we opened up a few other bars. The first one that was whiskey focused was called Bourbon. And we were really just drinking through all the bourbon. And from there, you start thinking about, trying other things. So we're trying single malts, we're trying Irish, Japanese, Welsh, Austrian. I mean, so you have this whole family of whiskey out there, and you go one whiskey to the next, and you realize now that you want to actually expose people to all of those whiskeys. So you need a space that's big enough that you can have the depth and breadth of the expressions. So that's what we did. We literally found a building big enough to house the whiskey that we loved. We just literally collected more whiskey than we could house in the locations that we had. So that's what we did. We found a big enough building, we bought it, and we threw the whiskey in here, and we had no idea that whiskey would take off the way that it did.
Where do you draw your inspiration from?
People always ask, how did you get into whiskey, or what the passion was, and it was one drink at a time. It really started like everyone else. You went to a bar, you ordered one single whiskey, and then you tried another, and then once again, it was just an endless ability to try every kind of whiskey.
So when I was whiskey advising here at Jack Rose, the core of the job is getting whiskey into people's hands, and ideally whiskey that they like. It doesn't always work out that way, but you end up, with 2,700 bottles, you end up finding something that's going to fit what they're looking for.
We never went into this thinking that it's going to be this hot spirit. We look at it as, people discovering something that's really done with such art and just such quality. Whiskey has always been made to be nuanced and special with everything coming together.
What makes it so special to you?
Magic. No, seriously, I always say this, what makes whiskey so special is the fact that so many things have to come together to make an amazing whiskey. Yeah. So you have to have a distiller or farmers who create great grains, then the miller who mills them to the right consistency, for then the distiller to turn it into alcohol, and then put it in the perfect barrel made by the right cooper, and then aged in the right environment. Have all of it come together to make one great whiskey is amazing.
What do you guys think you bring specifically to the table here in DC?
50 years from now, 100 years from now, we expect this collection to be bigger, older, obviously, because the collection will keep growing every year and compounding. So when we looked at this project, we were trying to find a space that was going to be around for 100 years.
I have been here for quite a bit of time, and I've seen the city change in many ways, but it has always been a very academic city. It's always been a very liberal city, and so I think you see that in terms of the restaurant community.
What do you think, though, is unique about the bar scene and the culinary scene here in DC?
So I grew up here, and my family actually opened their first bar here around the turn of the century. So, we've been in and on the bar business for more than 100 years now. And to see it go from a small, actually a more southern kind of town, to being an international city, and there's all this influence from this international scene to create an amazing food scene and this really interesting bar and cocktail scene. So you love it when someone comes from a different culture or a different ethnicity and brings that to the table, and then they infuse that into the cocktails or infuse that into the food, and you have this huge culinary scene and drink scene that I think is becoming unparalleled.
It's incredibly important, I think, to have women in leadership, to have diversity in leadership, especially in a city like DC that is an international city and is very diverse. When you have that in your leadership, and not just in leadership, but also in your staff, it allows you to have multiple perspectives on how to execute whatever goals your bar or restaurant has. I'm excited about the future of Jack Rose, and I hope that people that live in DC are excited about it as well and continue to grow with us and hang out with us. This is year 7, so we've been here for a while, and more and more I see people associating Jack Rose with DC.
The one thing about, say, American whiskey, specifically bourbon, is it really tells kind of the history of America in many ways. I mean, obviously you have stuff like the Whiskey Rebellion, and you have the Teapot Dome scandal from the very beginning, from George Washington himself being the largest commercial distiller in America, all the way up to present day. So you get the historic side, and you get obviously the magic that becomes bourbon, and it's really America in kind of this one spirit.
All right, well, we should fill these up and then cheers, and
Sure,
then we'll call it an interview.
That is the nicest way anyone's ever tried to get a free drink out of here.
Well, let's
Maybe fill these up so we can cheers.
Well, let's fill these up to cheers. All right.
Okay.
Cheers.
Cheers.